good morning, or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching. This is the third episode of Unfiltered IT. This episode is all centered around harnessing AI for the real world impact. We have a close colleague of mine, Aaron Bailey, joining us today. We'll get into some intros here in a minute. As stated, third episode. We're filming today, November 13th. However, we're going to roll this out as a recording just so that you can work this into your holiday schedule. I know we're coming into the Thanksgiving and Christmas and holiday season. So with that, we will jump right into intros here. We've got some great stuff in store around AI today. So I want to introduce Aaron Bailey. He is the GM of Devs.AI, as well as a co-founder of Built First Marketplace. Aaron, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, who you work for, and what you've kind of done.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Yeah, Aaron Bailey, general manager at Devs.AI, which is a first-party AI platform under our parent company, AppDirect. Came here about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. Last year in March, sold the company that I co-founded, Built First, to AppDirect. That was a marketplace platform. Make it easy for folks to spin up third-party or marketplaces with third-party vendors. On top of that, my background has mostly been in tech, just over 10 years in different SaaS companies, some venture capital sprinkled in there. So, I've been bi-coastal, New York, San Francisco now, though, almost 10 years in San Francisco. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you on. So I guess we'll start kind of at a remedial level because I don't know everybody in the audience and their familiarity. I certainly know if you've been around the tech world or tech adjacent, I think you could probably play a drinking game around the use of the word AI. You might not still be with us if you did, but you could. So we'll just kind of get right into it. So, kind of at its base level, what is AI? It really is like a simulation of human intelligence in machines and programs to think like humans. Certainly with rapidly changing business environments, AI is starting to become a very critical feature set. I'm sure, Aaron, you can elaborate on that. I'm sure you're
Yeah.
seeing kind of unprecedented opportunities and efficiencies that are happening right now due to the AI market that's coming into organizations. And, I know for years we've used things like computer aided vision and machine learning, which, while not directly AI, somewhat related, but certainly I think as things continue, what do you kind of see? I'm going to put you on the spot. Future state. What do you think it's going to look like 3, 5, 10 years from now with the way AI is going and what you're seeing in the business at this point?
Yeah, I have like sci-fi versions of the future and like it and non-sci-fi. Like it's really going to depend on a couple more leaps. There was the attention is all you need paper. There was the reasoning models. There needs to be this kind of recursive learning that happened. Like it's unfortunate. I think people expect these LLMs. Not to be static, but they're static things. So once they've kind of been pre-trained and post-trained and put out into the world, you can supplement their knowledge with a RAG pipeline and these types of things. But it's actually uh, it's not as easy as people want it to be for these systems to kind of continually learn about you, about what you know, about what you don't know, about your business, about your industry, all the proprietary aspects. And so I think that's going to need to get better. There are kind of, again, supplemental ways that is getting better with RAG and et cetera. But yeah, I think so that leap kind of needs to happen in order for the more sci-fi future where an agent is doing a lot of the mechanical, and when I say mechanical, it's this like tasks that are redundant.
Yeah.
You are doing that same task over and over again. So I think the future right now, the future that is available and possible, is this kind of team of agents that needs to be orchestrated, that needs to be directed by a human to do a lot of these redundant workflows and to assist with kind of insights and decision making, but doesn't take over the decision making quite yet. And so Yeah, we're walking a fine line, right? It's like it's right now. They're very
Yeah,
helpful. It's the calculator, right?
that's it.
Um, but not the CPA quite yet. Is how maybe
Yeah,
I would put it.
I think I heard one of our colleagues, I would say, explain it pretty well one time. I think he said, "Listen, AI at this point in time is like having a virtual assistant, and who doesn't want to have an assistant
Yeah,
that they can dole out their everyday mundane tasks to?" And the reason I asked you about the future state, I think, what was it, just a day or two ago, Bill Gates came out and said within the next 10 years, he sees people going down to a 2-day work week thanks to
yeah. I
AI.
don't know. I don't. I mean, that's always overstated, isn't it? Like it's like they've been saying that for decades. So I mean, he's definitely talking his own book. Obviously, a huge holder in Microsoft, and Microsoft being a huge holder of OpenAI. So if
Definitely.
that's if you, I mean, more time with my kids, I'm stoked. So, but I'm not planning on it. That's for sure.
I think the dirty joke will be that we'll just have to have 3 2-day a week jobs is what'll end up happening.
There you go. Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly.
So, I asked you that $1 billion question about where it's going, but really the $1 billion is here. So, these are just some statistics. Please feel free to provide any input on some of these things that you're seeing. But, $244 billion market size right now. 66% of people regularly using some form of AI tool. These next two statistics are very interesting to me. 75% of employees use a free AI tool.
Yeah.
That same statistic from Forbes also states that 69% of those employees are afraid to report that they were utilizing an AI tool, which I think is huge, at least from our perspective in the industry. Years of being a system administrator, I really did fear shadow AI, especially from a security
Yeah.
perspective. What does this mean for the organization? How can I keep the company safe from things that go bump in the night on the network when I don't even know it's happening, when I don't even know these products
Yeah.
need to be secured? I think some of these things are certainly um, moving things in the better. 90% of hospitals using some form of AI. That statistic was actually kind of a pendant from that Forbes article. It's 90% of hospitals are using AI as some form of machine vision to
Mm,
find some sort of whether that's cancer or some sort of form of anomaly on imaging
yeah.
faster than they were previously. And I think this is the one that kind of hits what you were talking about with those potential dystopian future. 67% of experts believe AI's benefits outweigh the risks that they might hold to society today. But I think, as we talk about it, you mentioned some things. I've mentioned machine learning and computer vision. You mentioned RAG model agent. We mentioned LLM just briefly in the conversation. I think let's pull everybody kind of up to speed. The industry loves to use
Yeah.
these
Fair.
acronyms. But let's just kind of hit some of these. Natural language processing. This is as it sounds. It enables the computer to understand and generate language that you and I communicate in every day. Um, Large language models, certainly that is the thing that everybody's talking about. That's our chat GPTs, our perplexities, our co-pilots. Um, these really are a generative AI that responds with that natural language. And,
Yeah, and I'll make a quick distinction there because that's actually good. I think the thing people need to understand is that the LLMs are, at the fundamental level, people have heard of GPT-5, they've heard of GPT-4o, they've heard of Gemini 2.5 Pro. Those are like at that LLM level. And then at the application level, you have Copilot as an application, ChatGPT as an application. Um, Grok has it. Yeah, Grok is an application, and then those leverage those LLMs. And so it's at the application layer. The application layer obviously has an interface that where folks can type in, yeah, using natural language. But they also have a variety of tools that enable the LLM. They can give it additional context. They can give it the ability to write code in a code sandbox. They can give it, the ability to create PowerPoints to ingest files that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. Like you can't send like a Word doc directly, like a Word doc file directly to an LLM. Well, actually, some LLMs I think maybe take it, but take it directly. But usually you have to have a tool in there that converts it into a into a format that the LLM is going to understand. And so that application layer is um,
Almost
super
like a
helpful, I
pre
think,
and
for
post,
folks.
almost like a pre and post processing of those things.
Yeah,
You know, the same way it can't take a Word document or a PowerPoint, it also generally cannot make one of those at the end.
without the right tools. That's
It can,
right. Yeah.
it can certainly make the content to put in it, but it needs the tool set. And so, I think that we'll get to that one right after this. But why don't you talk a little bit about small language model, which is the natural extension? People are used to these large language models, basically trained on these huge data sets that they scrape from the internet. But
Yeah.
talk a little bit about small language model in your
Yeah,
mind,
SLMs are interesting. I know less about them, but they come up in conversations, especially when we're talking to folks about going on-prem, and they want to lease their own H100 or something like that. And this is usually, well, it's a variety of players, but I'll just say generally like defense folks
yeah.
who have DoD contracts, or the primes, et cetera. I mean, there are LLMs that they can use, but if they want to go full on-prem, and have an SLM, a small language model that it does a specific task very well, then that is that's another route to go, right?
And I think you honed in on that right there, specific sets, data sets really well. I know may not be the exact use case for it. I hear a lot of the use of like small language model from customers who go, "Oh, well, we want to do a large language model based off of our data or our documents in our environment." Not necessarily small language model per se, because there's a lot of
Yeah,
details around training and things like that. There's very technical portions of that. But at the end of the day, I think users use that word interchangeably with knowing my company's data or maybe my industry information and acronyms and things like that. And then that all, we just touched on it, the generative AI part. That's creation of things, whether that's code with Claude or whether that's images or text, or you're seeing now all of these videos populate the internet from Sora. That's generative AI. And we touched on kind of some of these older technologies that are getting lumped in with AI while they're not explicitly AI. You and I both know machine learning and computer vision have been around for 20 plus years.
yeah. Well, maybe even earlier. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and they've been popularized for sure in the last 20,
Yeah.
30 years. Yeah.
But there's certainly, I'm hearing all of those words kind of get used together. And, I think some of this is a marketing ploy. You hear companies that 5 or 10 years ago were talking about their machine learning capabilities. Now they're talking about their AI capabilities. And I don't know that much has changed on the back end. It's just the new buzzword is to replace the use of the word machine learning with AI or computer vision with AI. And
Yeah.
and I'll let you talk a little bit about RAG model, because you had touched on those RAG model or RAG agent. So
So yeah, exactly. And it's really, so RAG just stands for retrieval augmented generation. So the idea is that you're uploading your own corpus of, or your own knowledge base, your own corpus of kind of proprietary data, you might say, to a vector database. And I think we actually might have did we keep in that
yeah, we got
what
a
am I?
slide.
The
We got
slide,
a
yeah,
slide
the
coming
graphic,
here.
whatever we had, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of describes like how this works. But essentially, you're just uploading the data; it's getting processed into a vector database, and then whenever that data is referenced in a prompt, um, the LLM will basically retrieve relevant data chunks from that corpus of data, and then basically send those chunks plus the prompt to the LLM, and then the LLM will kind of answer it with all that relevant context. Um, so that's how, hard to describe without kind of seeing it visually. And even our visual is oversimplified for sure for folks who actually have like built reg pipelines. There probably needs to be two branches coming off of the user. One is the data upload, and then the other is a prompt referencing those files. But yeah, I mean that RAG is I think a lot of people are like, okay, I want to train my own. Yeah, you kind of mentioned this before. I want to train my own LLM on my own data. It's like that is like overkill in many
Yeah.
cases, even in the terabytes of data land, right? It's like you don't necessarily need to do that. You can, as long as you're uploading it, the data in kind of an efficient way, uh, into an effective RAG. There's a lot of really great RAG, uh, or a vector database, open source database, vector databases out there that folks can use. It's really effective. So
Almost like right concept, wrong use of the words. People just are
yeah,
blurring the definitions and lines to say, "Oh, this is what I think that means."
and I
But
hear it all the time. And I don't necessarily correct people when they say like when we're talking about building an agent on Devs, get very easy to build an agent on Devs. They're like, oh, and then I want to train it on this data. I'm like, okay. And again, I don't say this, but I'm like, okay, you don't want to train it. You just want to upload it to the vector database so it can be referenced, which is like,
yeah.
they kind of mean this. I think that that's what they mean,
End
right?
users are really utilizing those two words interchangeably,
Yeah, yeah,
is
that's
the
right.
reality. And so, we talked about kind of these bigger agent models that I know a lot of people are just starting to dip their toe into, but there's a lot of purpose-built AI applications that we're already seeing today. These are just some of the ways that I've ran across that companies are utilizing AI today. We did talk about some of those agents, whether they're internal, external facing, customer service AI agents. I think everybody's heard the jokes about, car dealerships getting taken across and selling cars for $1 because somebody did
Yeah.
prompt injection.
I love that article. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Epic. Yeah.
Things like quick retrieval of data and information across large data sets. It is really easy to go look up a bunch of data really quickly, versus you having to look up that data. Comparing and contrasting the data they are very good at. Again, most of these are going to fall under that purpose built, meeting notes, phone call summarization, note taking, creation and automation of tasks, um, business development, customer research. We're seeing those, but you're seeing a lot of those, I think you would agree, as purpose built products. I'm going and buying something off of
Point
the shelf.
solutions. Yeah, as I would describe them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are converging into, because I mean the Devs.AI platform is a very general application. Like it's meant to to offer folks access to every LLM in kind of a private and secure way, in a kind of private workspace. Um, and but I mean we are constantly adding those new point solutions that we know have a high TAM, right? But yeah, I mean these are great examples.
It's almost like I feel like the Devs.AI platform is almost like the Lego of the AI solutions. Like you
Yeah.
can, if your mind can think
Constantly
it,
bolting stuff on.
you
Yeah.
can, yeah, but if your mind can think it, you can probably build it or connect to it. And as we
Yeah.
talk about kind of bolting things on or connecting to it, this it might be a new one for some of the people that are listening, but let's talk a little bit about model context protocol. So what is it? How's it changing AI? I know, I get a lot of customers that go, okay, they come from that old school mindset of, oh, everything has to talk to everything. So we need an API integration into Salesforce, and we need an API integration into HubSpot, and we need an API integration into our Microsoft SharePoint environment. But talk to me a little bit more about model context protocol. I've heard it there's some very cool, like very simplified explanations of it. But tell me a little bit more about what you think about it and how you feel that it works inside of the context of how it's changing AI and really changing up the way that people think about historically integrating products together.
Yes. Yeah. Great question. So, I mean, I think if you haven't heard of model context protocol, for anyone listening, you might have heard it referred to as MCP. This term is getting thrown around a lot these days. It is a kind of a framework that was put out, open source, kind of put out by Anthropic, one of the big LLM labs that everyone's kind of standardized to. So OpenAI is standardizing to it, et cetera. It's essentially just a set of tool calls. So actually, I'll just back up. It's a turnkey way to give an agent or an LLM, an AI model, um, read write access to a platform. And you can choose the different kind of read write actions. Maybe you don't want it to write. Maybe you only want it to read and just kind of pull in context. Maybe you only want it to write. Um, you want the agent to kind of take action in that platform. I mean, the way that I describe it though is it's a turnkey way to give AI read write action on any platform, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I've found really cool, one of the ways that I've heard it explained is it allows AI to use AI to figure out what tool sets can do. So, if you use MCP to connect it to an email solution, you're not telling the AI, okay, now you can send an email, you can create an email, you can create a calendar invite. It's utilizing AI to figure out what that platform can perform and then sending that information to the large language model to say, hey, listen, this is everything that this tool can do. So you don't have to program it specifically to do these specific things. You hear some very simplified things where it's like, rather than connecting it to Adobe and telling it you have a paintbrush and you have a circle shaped tool, it'll figure out all the tools that it has available to utilize within that
Yeah,
solution and then just use them to make what you're
yeah,
asking it to
and
do.
yeah, and the beauty of it, the beauty of it is similar to how everyone kind of standardized on REST APIs, and every platform had to come out with an API. They had to be API addressable if they wanted to be relevant. Now all these platforms are coming out with an MCP server. So and it's just very easy. They're making it very MCP makes it very easy to add this kind of quote unquote integration to your AI. And even on devs, I mean, we have our own first party MCP server where we've launched integrations, but we allow you to connect to third party MCP servers. So if Salesforce launches an MCP server, you can easily connect to that, and know it's secure because Salesforce built it, right?
Yeah. And
And then therefore
talk
you yeah, yep,
talk about one of the biggest guys in the industry that was that classic REST API integration. I think
yeah.
anytime I talk about MCP with a customer that has a little more knowledge, the first thing that gets mentioned is Zapier.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I mean, and that's what we kind of point people to Zapier. Like this is okay. So MCP is also I'll also say it's awesome. It's also very dangerous because you're giving read write access. You give read write access to your database. That you know what I mean. And it's like all of a sudden the AI hallucinates and deletes everything in the database. That's very bad, right? And so I mean. That you need guardrails and kind of et cetera. It's a very powerful tool. um, what was your question? That was a tangent. I wanted to make sure I answered that.
No, I think you got it. We're just kind of, I think this is a good conversation for people who may not know what MCP or model context
Yeah.
protocol is and kind of how it works
Oh,
and
Zapier.
how it's
Yeah.
replacing that. But yeah, we were talking about
Yeah,
Zapier and
Zapier is an
there.
iPaaS integration platform as a service. They
Yeah,
basically they have like what 10,000 integrations or something.
something along those
Whenever
lines.
generally you can basically plug in third party MCP servers, but you don't necessarily know who's hosting that MCP server all the time, and so that can be dangerous because there can be prompt injection stuff in there. There can be tool poisoning. It can be dangerous to use a third party MCP that's not built by that platform. But Zapier is it's a trusted third party
Yeah.
creator of these MCP servers, and so yeah, we definitely point people in that direction when they are just looking for a turnkey way to add a platform that they have in their tech
And
stack.
and I do think they talk pretty deeply about how they kind of prevent some of those off the rail hallucinations that can cause damage to the environment because of the tool sets there.
Yeah,
They've definitely got some stop gaps in place.
yeah,
But to kind of jump around, I know we talked about the AI agents and we talked about RAG agents or general AI agents. And I know these are oversimplifications maybe of kind of a deeper level. We talked about that branching path on the RAG agent. But if you want to talk about some of these diagrams of this is kind of the Devs.AI bread and butter. It's how you guys build agents. It's how most of the other platforms are also looking at developing and designing agents. To kind of talk us through for people who are unfamiliar past fighting with, United Airlines AI agent on the other side of the phone, but really talk us through,
yeah.
how they work and how people can better understand how to potentially construct these within their organization.
Yeah. So agentic AI is really just, or AI agents, for those who haven't heard this term, is really just AI taking action on your behalf. So instead of generative AI, where I'm chatting back and forth, how many words are in the English language, and it tells me what 300,000, whatever that number is. That's generative. Agentic is, hey, can you update this? Can you update this opportunity in Salesforce for me? Can you summarize these notes and input them in the opportunity, and then and then read the call notes and input the potential ACV in the ACV bit. But ideally, it has all the context that you're just saying. Update on my Salesforce opportunity that I have with Chris, right?
Right.
So that would be kind of an agentic, something that an AI agent can do. And so for those who are just listening, maybe who can't see the screen, Chris has a graph up here where it starts with the user input, and the user input goes to the AI agent, and then you have five or six, well, yeah, five here, different kind of things that are pointing to the AI agent that the AI agent is using as tools and inputs, and you have files that have been uploaded from unstructured data sources, maybe into the RAG pipeline. You have the LLM itself. Or the SLM, you have a bunch of connected data sources, and those might be read-write kind of action it can take on Salesforce, on Microsoft, on G Drive, on HubSpot. You have the ability for it to search and or scrape information from websites. You have the ability for it to call different APIs, again, for read-write purposes. And so all that kind of funnels into the AI agent, and then it can spit out an output. That output might be Salesforce opportunity updated. It could be a confirmation. It could be a lot of different things. But the general idea, I think, for AI agents is, one, there's been this term that a lot of people have, it's been popularized, called prompt engineering. And I think that it's not necessarily dying as much as the thing that's getting more popularized now is context engineering. So making sure that the agent, the AI, has enough context. What are my roles and responsibilities? What does this company do? What am I dealing with here? Do I have I been provisioned the tools to do what you're asking me to do? So context and tool use are really kind of the fundamental aspects of an AI, how an AI agent
Yeah.
can perform.
To piggyback off what you said, Aaron, one of the simplest ways that I explain it a lot of times to customers is I say, if you are aware of what prompt engineering is taking everything that you put in that prompt engineer. Like, I'm a solutions architect. I work in sales. This is the company that I work for. This is my background. All that stuff that historically they've, if you are involved with this at any level, they tell you, like, make sure that's all in the prompt. It's almost like moving that context to the agent. So the agent is already
Yeah,
aware of how it is supposed to act for you.
that's right.
And again, this is where you see a lot of companies training that on maybe all their, TechNet or help articles or all their customer information. And so that they can help and they know the context of how to help, whether that's internal to an employee that needs quick access to take action and service you as a customer, or whether that's you, the end customer, directly interacting with that agent. Um, and then I know we had talked about kind of unstructured data searching. That's one of the things that I hear from a lot of people. Most customers, that's the bulk of their data. Like, I know you and I love to live in this data hygiene world where, like, everything's in databases. It's in SharePoint, or it's in, I'm sorry, not SharePoint. It's in Salesforce. It's in, the database. It's in the structured database, and it's easy to go get. But that's the reality is, like, how many hundreds of files do both of our organizations have just kind of laying out there on
Floating.
shares that
Floaters.
nobody knows what exists? And then you're going, yeah, I know we talked about this in some paragraph on some marketing document that's
Yeah.
2.5 years old. How do we go and update it? So this is really kind of a RAG pipeline, if you will, for how to search unstructured data. So do you want to talk through this? This kind of gets into that vector database thing where you're talking about chunking the data so that it's understandable from an LLM perspective. I know that's something that is kind of a really deep, kind of high level conversation for a lot of people. It's a super technical topic, but at its lowest level, it is chunking that data so that it makes the LLM very much have an easy time going to grab that data and understand it and understand how to give it back to you in the way that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's so many like rag pipelines are one of those things that is constantly evolving. There's like new papers that are coming out about new methodologies for how to do rag every week. And my team tries to keep up with the general idea is, like, you have the trade-offs are accuracy, cost, and latency. Um, and so these new methodologies are aiming at, okay, when we pull information from these data sources, um, how long do I need to think? How many chunks of data do I need, or what we call documents on our platform should we retrieve with each prompt? Should it be 5? Should it be 500? Right? How much is that going to cost? So we allow you to actually choose a different LLM that's optimized for retrieval. So it's like an LLM kind of working within an LLM. So it gets a little bit meta there. And then you also have latency, right? So and then on top of that, cost. So I mean, the more you kind of search the LLM, the LLM searches the context and throughout the different chunks. It ranks those different chunks. It'll re-rank them. All that takes time, and then it costs not just the amount of input tokens of the original prompt. It costs quite a bit more. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of new methodologies kind of coming out to optimize for all those things. But generally, again, and this is for people who are looking at this who are familiar with RAG pipelines. I know that this is an oversimplification of how it works.
Definitely.
We're trying to kind of make it less complicated, I suppose. But yeah, the user is uploading the data to the RAG pipeline. It's kind of step one. And then there would be a second branch here that is like a prompt branch that would reference. So that RAG pipeline goes to the vector database, and then that prompt would go, to that LLM, chunk the data, choose the relevant chunks, amend the original prompt with those chunks. All that gets sent to the LLM, and then you get a kind of a customized response back that is relevant to the data that you've uploaded. Yeah.
And I know
Chris,
we've talked.
yeah, check me on that if that doesn't make sense
No,
for our
I
listener
definitely
here.
think it does. No, it certainly does. And I know we've talked a lot here about, I think there's been an undertone of security on all of this. I think that's the most important part. So we talked about, you talked about cost and the number of tokens and things like that. And the reality is, I think people look at AI and they go, well, I can just go to chatgpt.com and I can put information in and boom, I get an answer back. That's free. Why would I buy a paid platform? Why, the reality is, just like the bonus card at the grocery store that you're getting a discount from, nothing's ever free. It's your data that they're using as the fee. So they're utilizing that to continue to train the model. Certainly, when you start talking about customer information, when you start talking about PII, PHI, those types of things, obviously we don't want RAG model agents or agents in general or large language models getting trained on that information that might be specific to a customer. I think funny story, very early on, ChatGPT was outputting information about an Intel processor that hadn't been released. Come to find out, it's because Intel was using ChatGPT to do comparison work on previously existing processors versus this new processor that they had. Well, it started coming up in other users' prompts, or the prompt replies back.
Yeah,
And it
outputs.
was because they were being used to train that data. So we talk about security. Again, I talked about, it is the AI learning from the human interaction there. And any of the data that you put in there does run the risk to show back up in somebody else's output. I know that there's some very advanced enterprise plans on some of the platforms that I think I'm going to use the words maybe, because nobody really will give a for sure answer on whether that data isn't being used to train or not. Aaron, I do know that you guys have worked very hard to develop relationships with those vendors where you're saying you can't use this customer data to train, or you're running very
Yeah.
specific model versions. But I always kind of go back to that walled garden perspective, which is, there's three ways to keep people safe and the data safe on the AI platforms. It's the interactions, make sure there's guardrails there. It prevents the users from receiving the AI hallucinations. And, really, that's one of those things you saw in the news. lawyers are putting out documents, and it's got a bunch of junk inside of the document that it has. Well, come to find out, it was an AI hallucinating
Yeah.
mid
We're
document
getting
creation.
debarred. Yeah.
Yeah.
For that.
And then, around the policies and procedures, obviously, making sure that users are controlling the prompts, the data that they're putting in, the data that they're outputting, making sure they're using the models that are keeping that data safe. And then really, utilizing a secure solution, making sure that whatever data you're uploading, it's staying in that tenant. That could be the Devs.AI model or the Copilot model, where certain search contexts, if you turn it on, will stay inside of the tenant and not leave the model. But I know we're about halfway through. I have some really awesome industry questions that I'd love to ask you and just kind of pick your brain about. I think it would help a lot of the people that are listening today. So we'll just kind of jump right into some questions as you, from your area of expertise in building a platform like this, would love to hear how you think this is going to impact. So I'll start with my first question here. How should organizations develop and execute an AI strategy that works now, but will also be valid for the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think, I mean, to your point, I think it a lot. If depends on who you are in the stakes, right? I mean, if the stakes are PHI, you need to start with security. You need to start with a good AI policy, roll that out. Um, if that's healthcare, those are high stakes kind of industries. I am really interested in the organizations that come to me that are more risk on, and they're not dealing with nearly as high risk of data, but they are willing to kind of have this Cambrian explosion go out and have folks uh, basically source tools safely that work for them in their workflows. And then there's inevitably there's this Cambrian explosion. There's a mass extinction event, but you pull out the use cases. You're like, okay, this note taker is working really well. Okay, but out of these, there's 10 AI note takers. So we're going to use the one that's secure in these ways. Um, and then same with agents. So I think rolling out a platform um, that where you can begin to kind of build out your context, build out access to your systems in a safe way. Um, and again, there's what we've seen is, at least on our platform, is a Cambrian explosion of agents, where it's people will build out ridiculously cool things that we haven't even thought of. The things that we get through our kind of support line on, like, hey, can you add this, or hey, I want to achieve this. We see really cool things there, and so yeah, I think there's this tension between waiting for it to kind of be a top down motion, which I think is important. But then there's also this bottoms up motion where it's like you have pretty much the majority of your employees at your company are already using a personal AI something. They're using Gemini or ChatGPT or Grok on their phone, right? And they're asking it they're asking it probably things that they used to ask Google. Like what should be the internal temperature of a chicken breast when I'm baking
Yeah.
it in an oven. And so they already are kind of using it. So this kind of bottoms up strategy, I think, is really important to try to encourage somehow, so that you can begin to kind of get these mimetic use cases in particular roles, in particular departments, in particular industries, and then that even kind of crosses over its stage too. I mean, if you're looking at an early stage startup versus a large corporation, there's going to kind of be differences there. So I'm a big fan of like the methodology of like going top down and bottom up, so that you can source as many use cases as possible, lock them down as they kind of come up. Um, and will it be valid in the next 2 to 3 years? I think if you continue um, to source those use cases with kind of the new technologies that come up and the new methodologies. I think as long as you keep that kind of top down, bottom up mindset, that'll continue to be relevant in 2 to 3 years. I'm trying to keep it as meta as possible because in 2 to 3 years, I mean, I think everything looks very different.
I mean,
So
this industry is changing so rapidly. I think
yeah,
2 to 3 years is a lifetime away, and for some of these tools, I think transparently, you and I have had offline conversations about company consolidation, some of these vendors that are out there. I don't know that we're going to see even 50% of the vendors that we see today in 2 to 3 years. I
yeah.
think the market doesn't support this many vendors. There's going to have to be consolidation on that
Oh,
side. But
100%. Yeah. And I will say, I mean, I know, yeah, I don't want to waste too much time because this is only question one. I know we got more questions, but um, a lot of cases, the tech stacks only took 6 to 8 months to build before they went to market and hit, 100 million in revenue. And so I agree with you that there's going to be some massive consolidation over the next 2 to 3 years, because the moat isn't really in the tech, right?
I think to summate this, though, to kind of wrap up everything you said about this question specifically, I think the really important part of this is, you know, it sounds like you're saying put the guardrails in place, get the right continue to evaluate the tools, get the right tools in place, keep the right tools, get rid of the tools that aren't working for you from the AI perspective, but also foster that growth and put the guardrails on it.
Yeah.
So when the
Yeah,
employees want to
exactly.
use it, go
Yep.
for it. As long as the security and is in place, foster that utilization if they're choosing to do so.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. So next question. How should an organization prioritize an AI use case that scales across the organization? And I think this is, this goes into that conversation. We talked about foster it, but how to, somebody who's saying we don't have an AI platform in place today, we don't have something like this, you know, kind of touch on that, how you think that should look.
Well, yeah, I mean, they should prioritize use cases at scale, right? I mean, it's what's difficult is like we'll get folks that come to us that like we want to build, or this one small department wants to build a very complex AI agent that's going to cost a bunch of money versus another few departments that are much larger that have a more simple AI use case that's going to save just as many hours. You're going to prioritize the one that's going to scale across the org. So yeah, I think getting those quick wins is going to go a really long way, right? I mean, it's kind of like this whole, I mean, not to bring up like Dave Ramsey's death snowball, but you want to kind of hit the big stuff first.
Yeah.
You want to kind of hit those big, hairy, high TAM use cases first and scale those across the org, get those wins. It's going to look good for the execs. It's going to, the people who are dealing with this on the ground level are going to be more appreciative. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be my answer there. What am I
And
missing, Chris?
no, you touched on it there, but I think that's an important one that we see all the time, which is, we talk about this transition from maybe point product to something that is more holistic across the organization. And so what I see a lot of is, you're right, rather than maybe develop it or they go to an organization and develop it, these departments or divisions inside of an organization, marketing has their point product and IT has their point product and sales has their point product. And then they come back to IT and go, okay, make all these point products talk together. And now the reality is maybe they should have looked at, taken a step back, evaluated what their AI strategy needed to look like initially. They could have built those same things rather than as point products, built them in a more holistic solution. And now all the data would talk to each other, and that AI model or that AI agent would have a much deeper understanding of the organization across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Totally.
So with that, how can organizations navigate all of these different LLM models and options that they have? The Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity. I know we said not really LLMs, but the same. I think we also
But they
mentioned
leverage different
Claude and
models.
Anthropic.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT only has access to OpenAI models. Gemini only has access to Google Gemini models. Perplexity is a little bit, they leverage. Well, they do have their own API that they're kind of pushing, but and then Copilot really is. I mean, I think this actually might have changed recently, but I think it's just an OpenAI. Like they only have one model, so
yeah.
you can't really
They're.
select different models.
I believe
But
they're
and my
purely
guess is that
based
it's an
off of
OpenAI
that
model.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're purely based
Um,
off of OpenAI now.
And the issue with this is, I mean, to your point on navigating, it's like, okay, which one do I choose? And it's like, okay, well, let's go to your employees first. And if you survey your employees, and I hear this all the time, it's like our finance team loves the Gemini models because they're better with numbers, and my marketing team loves the OpenAI models because they like they like how it writes or something. The Anthropic models are loved by the software engineers, and that's ever changing, right? I mean, these model providers, these LLM providers, are constantly leapfrogging each other, in an effort to make one another irrelevant. And so the consumer is winning, right, with competition amongst them. The issue is it's going to make it a lot harder for you to know which one is going to win in the long run. Because every month there's a new leader, there's a new LLM leader for the category that you're looking to use it for. Which is why this is a layup question for me. I appreciate you asking this question, Chris. LLM agnostic platforms are going to win in the long run for businesses, is our bet, right? Like, you need to avoid vendor lock-in. The number of CIOs, CTOs I've spoken with that are like, I regret spending 500K on OpenAI or on Gemini, et cetera. Like, because you're going to have a team that comes to you and they're like, hey, I know that we just spent 500K on buying ChatGPT enterprise licenses, but can we buy a few Gemini licenses for my team? Can we buy a few Grok licenses? Can we buy a few Anthropic licenses? Like, and it's like, what the heck did I buy this? Why? Like, I mean, we're kind of being redundant on the token rate limits that we're doing. This is very much kind of wasted spend, which is why I mean, Devs.AI is why we built, one of the reasons we built Devs.AI, right? Model agnostic. You're using our API keys. $30 a month per seat gets you access to 22 million tokens you can use across any of those models. We have 8 different providers.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
and and I think you're talking about a perfect world there. I like that you said that they come back to you and ask for a couple. The reality is, no, they charge it to that manager charges it to their
yeah,
company credit
exactly.
card, and then IT has no concept that it's
Yes.
being used on top of the other platform. We
Yeah.
just spent $500,000 rolling out, ChatGPT Enterprise. And oh, by the way, there's these, Claude Code licenses hiding over here in the dev team
Yeah,
that
exactly.
nobody ever
Yes.
talked about because they don't want to lose it because they're
Yeah.
already heavily leveraging it.
Yeah, what the heck? You could use Codex. I don't like Codex. I like
Yeah.
Claude Code, right? Like, yeah, no, 100%.
So I think you kind of, again, I feel like this might be another softball for you, but I feel like we kind of just touched on this with the comment that you just made. With
Yeah.
the AI software costs already on the rise, how can they control the spend? I think that really is in finding a platform that allows them to be agile. As you stated, as I stated, this stuff is changing week by week, day by day, month by month. It's
Hmm.
leapfrogging. It's Claude Code putting ChatGPT on the back foot, and then somebody releases something new, and now the other guy's playing the catch up.
Yeah.
And so it really is this agile world that we live in, where I think you've got to allow those employees to have access, but you've got to do it in a cost effective way. And I think looking at a model that gives you access to multiple platforms in a cost effective and secure manner is probably what a lot of the mid market segment is going to really be looking at as far as
Yeah.
this goes.
And it's not, it's kind of an ancillary benefit of our platform. Like, we don't go around advertising like we're a more cost-effective solution. It just happens to be that when you kind of integrate all the models into one platform and you allow folks to spend those tokens at any given model, that it does save a lot of money. So I mean, the amount of folks that I speak with who are like, hey, like, I have a team subscription to ChatGPT, a subscription to Gemini for my team, and a subscription to Anthropic. You're telling me that I can cancel all those and just consolidate on devs. It's like, yeah, you're not going to hit rate limits there, like so and they're saving 50 to 80% depending on how many subscriptions they had before. So yeah, very nice. So, yeah, there are a bunch of there's a suite of a cost control center that I think needs to be built. I think we'll build it next quarter, that allows folks to better kind of bucket. Okay, because I mean, especially if you give kind of cursor Claude code to an engineer with uncapped spend, I mean, they will blow a lot of budget. I mean, they'll ship 10,000 lines of code a day. You know what I
Well,
mean?
this
But
is
it'll go hard. So it's really, I do think that there's a layer of cost control, an additional layer of cost control that probably needs to be released. Generally in the market, I think again that will build that. I haven't seen anything compelling out there yet for
yeah.
that.
I think this is uh, you know, mid 2010s all over again. It's just a different solution. This is cloud. We talked about
Exactly.
the big hyperscalers. Everybody got there, and then, oh, by the way, our developers just spun up 40 instances today in AWS of Docker containers, and oh, by the way, now we're getting slammed another $7,000 a month,
Yeah.
and nobody had oversight on this. It was just spend, 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 and now we're seeing the other side of that as well, kind of wind down to the point where some people are even looking to move that infrastructure back on site because the cost, there was no cost
Wow.
containment. It got out of control.
Yeah.
So, I do agree. I think you're really talking about where this is going. Um, we talked about some of these purpose-driven AI tools versus, or as you said, point solutions versus custom developed tools. What do you think are the pros and cons to purpose-built or point tools versus the custom-built stuff that you're seeing in Devs.AI? Or maybe rather than the pros and cons, talk us through like why you think somebody goes with one over the other. Certainly, like there's things that make a lot of sense. Why build your own agent that's going to attend a meeting and take notes for you when for $7 a month I can go buy Crisp or I can go buy, Blue Jean or, there's tons of platforms out there.
Yeah.
That one's a no-brainer. But I think, a little more complicated things. Maybe talk about that. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, I mean, as electrons get cheaper, as energy gets cheaper, and as data centers continue to get built out and token cost goes down, um, the value will continue to kind of at the application layer, there's going to be value that's accrued, and then that cost will go down because there's 100 meeting AI meeting note takers, and it's not that hard for me to for it to be consolidated, right? For similar to, I think it was, Microsoft, how they just like came out with Microsoft Teams for like no
Yeah.
extra cost, right? And well, now I think it now is an additional cost. We don't use Teams ourselves, but so I think the build versus buy math is kind of changing across all of software, and the price continues to go down, but there's other things that like you just maybe don't want to deal with the hassle. Like you mentioned going on prem. I mean, going on prem, just to get further that analogy, that's annoying. The maintenance of that, like the security of that is annoying. And it's the same with these platforms. I mean, we do talk to folks who want to build a version of devs internally, and it's like, okay, cool. We just came out with a new skills architecture for, that LLMs and agents can use on Devs.AI. It took us, a couple months to build. You have one engineer that you want to try to basically replicate devs to build a secure environment for these LLMs. Um, like that's going to cost you initially. I mean, yeah, there was this Reddit thread the other day that was like, it's going to cost the customer 60K initially, and then these onboard, that these kind of consistent maintenance fees on top of it with this software development agency that they use to kind of build this devs type of platform internally. So I do think the build by math is like constantly in flux, but there are things like security and like making sure that you are continually on the bleeding edge um, of tools and being able to simply upload your context, etc., that make it kind of a platform like ours kind of inescapable to like it's getting to be very hard to build that with the limited resources folks have internally. I don't know. Does
Gotcha.
that answer your question,
It
Chris?
does. It does. I know we're getting close on time. I would like to get two more questions that I had
Yeah,
in my
let's do it.
kicker for you
I can go a
that I
little bit
think
over
are
totally.
really good. Um, I get all the time AI is going to replace people's jobs. I don't know that that's going to be true. And if it is, we're an awful long way away from it. So my question is AI really replacing jobs? I think we already can answer that. Or is the solution, or is it a solution that can really augment an organization's current workforce? Talk through, we talked about it being kind of that, potentially what we see is like a almost like a receptionist or a kind of personal assistant for somebody. Talk through that. Like, what do you see? What are some of the cool use cases that, if you can share, maybe that you're seeing? You talked about some of these agents that your customers are building that you were like, hey, we didn't even realize our platform could really
Yeah.
do something like that. Maybe talk
Yeah.
through some of those.
Yeah. So just to answer this question directly, I mean, I think the way I view AI is in the same way that, you look at a tax accountant without a calculator. It's like the tax accountants need calculators. That is a great tool for them to have. And for folks who are like,
Exactly.
no, I'm not pro calculator. I'm anti calculator. It's like, okay, cool. Well, you're fired. Like
Yeah.
I need you to use this new tool. It's going to allow you to do way more tax returns than you were able to do before. Um, so in a similar way, I mean, the tool here is intelligence, is like, um, and I mean that varies depending on the task that you have to do and the complexity of that task. But I think this intelligence will allow folks, especially with agentic AI, is going to allow folks to get a lot more done. Um, and when you get a lot more done, revenue goes up, costs go down. What do you do with that revenue? You don't usually just pocket it, you reinvest it to grow the business. And so overall, I mean, GDP is going to skyrocket. Hopefully jobs continue to skyrocket because there's just going to be a lot more kind of new jobs created. So
Gotcha.
that's my kind of bull case for AI. Will some jobs be replaced? Yeah, hopefully the boring ones. The ones that are like the ones where humans pretend to be machines,
Yeah, exactly.
where they're doing the exact same thing. System over here has data. It needs to go in system over here. We don't have a way to port that data over. So we have a human go and manually port that data. It's like, okay, it's the same data. It's you just have a human doing that. That is grueling work.
I'll
And
supply a
yeah,
use case
anyway.
for that one specifically that you and I can probably both align with. I absolutely hate trying to figure out between multiple parties like when to set a meeting. And I know there's,
Yeah.
other solutions for that, but imagine just having an AI that goes out and calls everybody and goes, "Okay, what time is everybody available? Okay, I found a time that matches everybody. I'm going to send out the invite and put it on everybody's calendar."
Yeah.
Those types of tools exist today. Talk about tasks that humans have to perform that machines could handle that they don't want to perform, at least for me personally. And I know you do a lot of meetings as well. That's one of them. Like the coordination on that, and like, oh, I can make this time, but I can't make that time. And it's
Hmm.
you and I both know. Um, so I did also tee up another one for you that I thought was really cool because
Yeah.
you guys specifically have a really neat use case number around this. I know kind of it's somewhat associated with the AI side of things, but you know, maybe if you want to talk about what vibe coding is, because I don't know that everybody that's going to
Yep.
listen today knows
Yep.
what vibe coding is, but as well, then how is it impacting organizations? But the reality is, if you're allowed to share how it really impacted AppDirect and what you guys saw out of this vibe coding, and
Yeah.
it was vibe coding that's available inside of the Devs.AI platform.
That's right. Yeah. So vibe coding. So we talked about natural language processing. What's cool about LLMs, we the fact that we can speak with them in our natural language is that natural language has now become a form of code, right? So I can say, hey, to the LLM, hey, I need an app that is a project management app specifically for insurance brokers who are doing these activities, and I needed to talk to these two systems. I can use my natural language to tell an LLM that, and then the LLM can go and code a custom application for me that does that. This is called the kind of street term is called vibe coding. Some people can now cringe at that, I think, but specifically my head of product hates the term. But this is what everyone knows what you're talking about usually when you hear the term vibe coding. Social media really popularized it. So I mean, at AppDirect, our parent company, we've basically begun to use these tools to replace internally. SaaS tools that we have that are just like kind of classic CRUD databases. And so we've saved about 250K in SaaS spend to date. And that's across everything from, we want to launch a new landing page kind of website for this new brand that we acquired, to, like HR. We have different HR systems that we spend, tens of thousands of dollars on per year, that we've deprecated because we have people in IT and HR using their natural language to create applications. And so we're coming out. We've launched it internally. Chris kind of alluded to this, and we announced it at our annual user conference called Thrive. But we're soon to release out to the public. We're calling it our app builder. And you can talk to it the same way that you talk to an LLM, like an AI model like ChatGPT or something. But you're just saying, hey, I want to create an app that does this. And then it'll go and code that app for you. And then you can say, I'll add this, subtract this, make it this color, here's a logo, put a logo on it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very impactful for us.
And I would say, to continue what you said, HIG internally has used it a handful of times already as well. We looked at the cost of Eventbrite versus a vibe coding tool, and we could get a vibe coding tool that I asked it to make an Eventbrite style solution for the same price that Eventbrite cost me. And now I have other things, and now I have access to other things as well. I can basically do whatever I wanted to do. It's almost, again, it's like that Lego idea. If you can dream it, you can build it. I think that's one of the neat things from a vibe coding perspective that not a lot of people are talking about. Generally, you had two schools of thought. I had the programmers who know how to write code, but they may not understand the software that they're trying to write to fix the problem, or they have to be trained on that. Then you have the other side of things where you've got the accountant who knows exactly what they want. They just have to properly be able to describe that to the programmer to build something. What we're saying is, listen, no longer does that have to be the case. I'm not saying put your accounting data into a vibe coding solution, but certainly it is, it's enabling people who have zero programming capability to write applications that really, makes their lives a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, the most recent example for us is, an HR tool that tracks our OKRs across departments, and like basically communicates those OKRs, tracks how, what the progress is towards them. Tool that we've vibe coded, right? And so we were spending 60K a year on that tool. On not that tool, but a third party that was, kind of providing a software as a service for that. And then we kind of relatively easily 3-4 weeks vibe coding, and then we actually had our one engineer go in and make sure it was fully secure before we rolled it out to the company. So very powerful for us.
And I think that's that trust but verify thing as well. I'm certainly not saying replace all your developers or throw it out the window and just do vibe coding. I think it's important that you guys have taken a very, cautious approach to the vibe coding, where you are having somebody who knows what they're doing review the code after the fact. Make sure that that is secure, that it's safe, before you just say, hey, let it fly. I think that's maybe the negative connotation that vibe coding has received in the past, is like, listen, we don't know what's going on. We don't even know what the code looks like behind it, because somebody gave, 2 paragraphs worth of prompt and now has an application, and nothing was taken into review before it was just put out in the world. With that being said, Aaron, I would love for you to give the 1-minute elevator pitch. I know you kind of did already, but talk a little bit about Devs.
Happy to. Yeah. So Devs is, as I mentioned, an AI platform. We provide private AI workspaces that give access to every major LLM across 8 different providers, and we have a no-code agent studio as well. Make it easy for folks, non-technical folks, to come in and build the types of agents that we talked about here today. And then we're always adding kind of new features. Like we mentioned, we've released a vibe coding tool that we call App Builder. We've released that internally, hoping to get people into the beta in Q1 of next year. A lot of exciting things coming. We have our own MCP server, make it very easy for folks to turn on integrations for those agents, or for the App Builder, or just from our default chat. So we have a free version. People can sign up. I think maybe Chris, maybe you can put your link in the show notes or something like that. People can
Yeah.
sign up through that. And personal plan is $15 a month if bought annually, and $18 a month for month to month. And then the business plan, which most people buy, is $30 per month if bought annually, or $36 a month if bought month to month.
And
And thank you so much for having me on.
another plug for one thing you've kind of forgot to mention about the platform that I've been using is you guys not quite there yet, but there is a clone of kind of the NAN flow style
Yes,
of
within
building
our
as
agent
well.
studio. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Yeah,
great.
the workflow builder is
Awesome.
very powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
adding determinism to probabilistic agents, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, Aaron, thank you so much for the time to chat with me today. Appreciate all the insight. And I'm sure my customers and the people that I talk to are going to appreciate this as well. So, really appreciate the time that you gave us today and look forward to continuing to talk more and more with you about AI as the future kind of unfolds and how these real world use cases and real world scenarios start to impact how we're utilizing AI on a day by day basis.
Right on. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.